Hello and welcome to Love, Dating, and Relationships. I'm your host, Julie Grimm. I'm a spiritual guide and energy healer in the Modern Mystery School. And I'm here today with Steph Palermo. I'm really excited to have you, Steph. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for
Uh,
having me.
yeah. Steph is an intuitive coach. She's a healer, influencer, and she was a talk show host for many years. She's an international speaker and published author. She draws from her ability to read souls and energy and other spiritual gifts as well. So thanks for joining, Steph.
Thanks for having me here. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, in discussing what our theme was going to be for today, we talked about lots of different things. But we talked about specifically you working with people that you coin as second lifers.
That's right. So, second lifers are empty nesters, newly single, and those starting over. It's essentially the over 40 crowd. However, there are younger folks that are, starting new, or they've been sort of enlightened, or they're ready to make changes, or, they're just there and they say, okay, well, I don't need to waste 10 or 20 years of my life and then figure out that I'm not doing the right thing here. So, but it's essentially the over 40 crowd. And I, it's people like me that, where I'm an empty nester, I've been divorced. I was dating, and when I was going through my divorce, my lawyer said, you have to get a job. And I said, what? A job? That's the J word. It's kind of like B, like budget. And so I said, well, what am I going to do? So I started writing, and I started writing, and I wrote my books, and and I got on the radio, and I had a great talk show, which I had a blast with. And I'm always looking to go back on radio. I love it so much. And so I I started to see clients and coach, and it's I call it coaching, but it's really a spiritual guide, because I really am I'm more of somebody like an Old Testament prophet, somebody who says, this is the way you're living your life, and it's not going the right way, but here's some ways you can get back on track and help them find purpose and alignment. I'm also a healer, and like you. And so, I have an exclusive membership community. I offer a 12-week soul journey coaching package, soul journey retreats, workshops, things like that.
Yeah. And so, for these, it sounds like you work with second lifers, but then also just lots of other people in general. And what sorts of things do you notice in that community that people struggle with? And specifically about like dating and relationships. And you were talking about how you kind of hit that second life and had to
Yes.
rediscover sense of purpose, a sense of self, sense of identity. And then, also, how do I date?
Yeah, I mean, it was almost like, I was in a little shell. I raised my kids for 20 years. I mean, I had these gifts. I've known since I was little girl, that I had a great purpose for this, my walk in this skin. Uh, However, it's easy to hide, and when you're in that life, and I just kind of kept quiet, and that was it. And I had to come out with that, and just kind of say, okay, and own my gifts, and be vocal with that, so that people can find me. And you know the thing about second lifers is, especially if it's I want to say the 50-ish crowd, 45 and up, it's where the most messed up generation there is, because our parents had one foot in the 50s, one foot in the 60s. A lot of times they stayed in marriages that were abusive and toxic. And if they left and got divorced, it was scandalous. We're the last sort of generation to actually have a choice to stay home and raise our kids. And we actually said, okay, I think I'll stay home and raise my kid. Nobody really does that anymore. Not too many. And both is fine. This is no
Right.
judgment. I'm just saying
Honestly, I
that.
feel like it's a dream. I'm like, where are you at? Like, sure. I'd
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to hang out a little bit more. Yeah.
So it's and we we are messed up on the technology. It's just crazy. We did a lot of things for the wrong reasons. I think the younger crowd, I praise them. They especially the women, they are strong, they find their careers, and then they get married when, because they're in love and it's a great union. They're not they're just
There's a little
self-sufficient
bit
on their
more,
own.
yeah, a little bit more independence maybe, or
Yes.
stability and self.
Yeah. So for us, then all of a sudden we hit our 40s and we're going, oh my gosh, who is this person that I've been sleeping with? I've been sleeping with the enemy. And you then there's a lot of divorces and God forbid illnesses, and you lose that person. So now you're saying, oh my gosh, now I have to date. Well, I don't even know how to turn on the computer or answer my cell phone. And I have to try and figure out how to swipe left or right.
Right. Well, and also
And
I imagine the whole dating world has drastically changed.
it has, but if you're looking for a partner in your age group, it's helpful because, people my age like to talk on the telephone. So, and I think that texting can be a problem. It can be a real problem for dating across the board. You misconstrue things. You don't understand it. It's not clear. Then they start to use, acronyms, and you don't know what that means. And I'm going, what does that mean? And then finally, someone has to say, well, oh, that means laugh out loud. This is years ago, but you don't know.
What
And
emoji, like, was he saying, is that a snide emoji? Is he laughing? Is it a
right.
content emoji?
So we tend to jump on the phone, and when you talk on the phone, and this is the great part about online dating. You can talk on the phone and get to know people and ask them questions instead of having that immediate, really hot chemistry. And then it fizzles. You really just realize that it was just chemistry and it's not really anything there of substance. There's nothing of
Right. More
substance.
like excitement or kind of the lower lust versus like
Right.
a real passion that's going to
And
sustain over time.
and being clear with your intentions, being able to be people our age tend to know what they don't want, and I'm not doing that anymore. They say, I'm not doing that. It's not happening for me anymore. I'm not putting up with somebody who doesn't see the gift in me. Right. So
That's important. That's
yes,
important for everybody of all ages, but that's so fulfilling when you can finally get to that point of self
absolutely. So
acknowledgement.
right. But here's the other downfall with our age. We've been through so much pain. It's a lot. We get to this place, and a lot of people can't, they're shackled to the pain that they've gone through with other relationships, and they can't let it go to move forward. And when you go, if you want, I had a girlfriend that always would say, don't paint that person with the same brush from the person before, and so we start to say, well, that one left me, that one did this, that one did that. Well, and you have all these, rules, or the just step rules of dating. And then, someone else comes in, and you start to put preconceived notions on them, and it's not really fair. They're a different person.
It's almost like a
So
sabotage of the relationship, actually, because you're not dealing with reality, you're dealing with the past.
that's right. And a lot of us have been through so much that it can be difficult. You have to let it go. You have to be able to, and and here's the key. And people say, oh, when you're in between relationships, that's when you should work on yourself. And I remember hating that when I would have a bad breakup because uh, so remember, I was married for 25 years, 24 years. I was together with that person for like 30. And I never really dated. So now all of a sudden I'm like this little kid in a candy shop. I'm going, oh my gosh, oh, he's so cute and nice, and I like love him. And and then you get hurt, and they say, well, it's time to work on yourself. And I was furious. But what happens is if you can get through that pain and really get to a place where you don't care if you have somebody in your life, that's when the person will come in.
Right. Yeah. Well, I remember people saying that, and I would hate that because for a very long time I didn't feel content with where I was. So it took me many years basically of that, of, spiritual healing, of self-love and all of that, to finally get to a point where I felt content on my own.
It wasn't until I went to Sicily in 2019 and I learned so much from the Sicilians, but I also now had this new community because I have all these new friends in Sicily, and I had this community, and I said, you know what? I don't need anybody. I don't. This is what's important. If you have a really good, strong community around you, you won't look for love in all the wrong places. And when Mr. Right or Miss Right comes in the door, you'll be, open to receiving them from a healthy standpoint because you have all these friends and family that you're surrounded with that you get filled up. Your cup is full. You don't need somebody to fill your cup. They are sort of the whipped cream on the latte, and that's what you want. And I remember, when I moved back up to Boston, and I remember saying, you know what, I love my house. It's clean. The bed is so easy to make. The toilet seat is down. There's no dishes in the sink. I don't want anybody coming in here and messing up my world. Literally and figuratively. And it was then, shortly thereafter that I met Jimmy, and I'm engaged.
It's such a place of power, like what you're talking about. It's such a place of power. I remember the first time I ever felt that way, not too long ago, honestly, sadly, but whatever, that's how life is. And I thought, I was dating somebody, they were over, and I was like, I kind of want him to go. I would like to be in, I'm gonna watch a movie, but I want to do it by myself. I feel good. We did, we chatted, okay. We had some tea, but it's time for you to go home. And maybe I'll see you tomorrow and maybe not, but I just kind of want to be alone. And like that had never
Yes.
really been the case. Even with people that I knew, they weren't necessarily the love of my life. It was still like, well, this is more fun than what I'm going to do. Or like you're saying, this is, trying to bring somebody into your space versus being so content with your space and your own energy. It's so powerful what you're saying.
It is. And, I felt like what you're saying for a long time. And, and it's nice because you're okay with you. You like being with you. I'm like, okay, it's Saturday night. And, especially during lockdown, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch a movie. I'm going to get on the bed, get on the couch and whatever, and have popcorn and wine and watch a movie and night and happy.
Right. And be happy about it and not be reaching for something or feeling like there's a lack or something missing. But so what you're saying, because that's, I love that. It's about community, having a sense of just that support and love coming
Yeah.
from friends and family.
Yeah. I mean, I have, before I was dating Jimmy, I had all my friends, and I was going over to my girlfriend's house, who's married. Like all my friends are married, and it didn't matter. And even when I lived in Atlanta, a lot of times I was always, going out as the third wheel because I wanted to, and it was fun and it was easy. And when I was in Sicily and going out and just being with my friends in the community there and sitting in the piazza and not having any ties to anybody, it's just, and it's nice. And because, and I said this to you before, when you finally do meet that person, when you're with the right person, you are free and you can be autonomous and still meld your worlds and be together.
Yeah,
And
that's huge.
it really is. And it takes it, it takes, unfortunately, until you wrap your head around it and take the time and really start to do things that feel good for you alone, you'll be pining for somebody else. And when you're pining, you're not going to attract the right person.
Right. Or you're going to like throw yourself at them because you're desperate and hungry. You're like, let's go from 0 to 1 million.
Right.
And not look at the red flags and not look around because
Exactly.
I need a warm body right now.
Yes.
So
Well, sometimes we have to realize that a warm body is not better than nobody, and nobody is better than just anybody.
wise words. So if somebody is listening now and they're starting to identify they haven't been feeling this way, maybe they've been struggling with it. What would you, I mean, should they go to Sicily? What's going on there? Like, what's happened to us societally that that's not the case any longer for so many people?
Okay, so here's a good. Sure, they can come with me on retreat to Sicily, absolutely, or work with me, on getting okay in your own skin, definitely. However, uh, the problem is that we are isolating more and more. We're not spending time. There is nothing in this world that can compare with spending time with people in physically. So things that I wrote about in my book, it's not personal, Sunny, it's business, how to run your family life and business like a Sicilian, sitting down to Sunday dinner with friends and family. So, when I came back from Sicily, I'm like, what happened to my Sicilian family? Why aren't we getting together? So every, once a month or so, I would host Sunday dinner at my house with all the kids, the cousins, and my nieces and auntie, can I bring my friend? Of course, bring your friends. Yes, everybody's welcome. I would invite a couple of my friends, whoever was around to come and enjoy Sunday dinner with us. And we just sit around the table and talk and eat and laugh. I mean, laugh, crying, tears coming out of your eyes, laughing. It that's what people need. People need to be around people. They're isolating, they're texting, they're not talking on the phone, they're not being together, they're not having conversations. I'm worried because people are not going to understand that something like 90 to 95% of communication is nonverbal, but nobody's around anybody to see that it's not that there's all this going on, and I'm not going, all right,
It's like they
whatever.
don't even know what they're missing in a
They don't
way.
know. And how about the eyes? The eyes are a mirror to the soul. Being able to look somebody in the eye and know that they're shifty or not, whether that you can trust them,
Yeah.
their tone of voice, when they pause, their hand gestures, all of that, and being together physically, spending time. And I talked about this week in my membership community. My sister would always come in my house and go, I can't stay long. You just got here. And I would be in Sicily, and my friends, and they were young. I met all these young people at the nightclub, and I said, oh, come to my house for dinner, I'm going to cook. And I had all these Sicilians at my table, like 15 of them. They would sit there for like 8 hours just talking, and
Mhm.
there wasn't a drunk fest. Wine was there, but it wasn't a drunk fest. It wasn't like overeating, and it was just hanging out and talking. And sometimes we'd take our chairs and sit on the street like they do, in Boston, or in the old neighborhoods. That's how they
Mhm.
do it in
Mhm.
Italy. They all bring their chairs outside. There's no air condition. So you, you go
Mm.
sit outside, and we would just sit around and talk. And, or we'd be at the coffee shop. We don't, oh my gosh, it's 4 a.m. and we're just sitting around talking. Nobody's doing that here. Everybody's in a rush. For what? They're not even, and then everybody's unhappy. They don't know why.
Mm.
And what's going to happen what is happening is people, instead of filling up with your community, people are looking to other things because they don't really know what's missing because they never had it. They just know something's missing. So it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Whatever it is that's going to, fill that void.
Right. It's
And then,
it's the dopamine hit, it's the quick release. I mean, I know for me, it's my phone. And so even while you were talking, I was thinking back just over New Year's, I spent some time with my friend. And the first day, I remember I was like, wow, I haven't looked at my phone the entire day. Like, unfortunately, as much as teach meditation, all that stuff, I look at my phone quite often. And it struck me, and it was a very different energy that I was in because, like I was taking time off. So there weren't these outside demands, but also I was just committed to, I'm spending this time with this
right.
person. And actually filling, very nourishing, exactly what you're saying. I felt nourished by that time and I actually felt rested, even though it's not that I was I was out and about, I was doing
Right.
things, but I wasn't constantly, giving into those kind of lower energies of dopamine hit from Instagram or whatever
Right.
it is.
That's and I actually struggle first thing in the morning because I know the best time to meditate is right when you go poop. And so I struggle and I try really hard to get out of the bed as quickly as I can, because I will get tied to the phone. And so yes,
And
it's
it
all of
changes
that.
your energy too, because you wake up, you're in the dream state. Maybe you're thinking about something that happened there, but then you check your phone. Well, now it's like what this person said at work. And not always, but sometimes it can trigger you, or already your energy has now shifted from this relaxed space to more heightened
Yes.
one.
Yes. And what happens is too, you're influenced by something outside of you instead of what's inside. And we should never look to externals for our own contentment and joy, because I mean, it's kind of like, if you look, okay, if I think I'm going to rely on what's going on outside of me, well, one day is going to be sunny, one day is going to be rainy, one day it's going to be a hurricane and a tornado, the next day it's going to be 110 degrees. So, you have to find what's going on within. When you let other people around you dictate your joy, you are hanging your hat on a hook that can't bear its weight. Okay, you need to rely on yourself, because somebody's going to be in a bad mood, somebody's going to be busy, somebody will have just had an argument with somebody, or whatever it is that's going on, you'll have a flat tire. You, you you can't you can't rely on externals.
Right.
And if you look within and you find that joy within, and you're living that best purpose driven life that's aligned, and you're fed by your community, then when somebody comes into your world, when that you have that, "Oh, there he is," or there she is, it's going to be such a great joy to welcome that person. And you'll attract the right person who's aligned to you, because it's like attracts like.
Right. And because also you're resonating at a much better energy.
Yeah,
So
your higher
you're in
vibe.
integrity with your divinity, your essence, your core self, versus your distracted mind,
Right.
wounded self,
Right.
whatever it might be.
Right. And here's the other part. When you're living in that life that I just described, and you're practicing extreme self-care and all of that, when somebody comes into your world who start to show up with negativity or complaining, or a lot issues, they've got, X issues or whatever, those red flags are going to be so visible to you, because you won't want to lose that peace. So you'll be able to say, you know what, honey, you just go and fix your life, and when you're all set, give me a call and see where I'm at.
Right. See you then. Maybe. Maybe
Maybe
still
see
not.
where I'm at.
Yeah. Let's check in 5 years from now, say. So,
Right. Right. Yeah. And I always say, and we talked about this before, you and I, about the four criteria to sit at my table. So what happens is, you want to invite somebody to sit at your table. And this is sort of an idea. You need to know what you bring to the table. What do I bring to the table? Okay, what are my gifts? What do I have? And then when you invite someone to sit at your table, the four criteria, do they deserve to sit at your table? And that it's like, what do you like? Do they have a job? Do they have a really great sense of humor? They have family values? Do they like, do they have time to spend with you? Are they available emotionally? That's the number one. Number two, do they see the gift in you? Do they know whose table they're at?
I
So
love
sorry
that
about the
part.
dog.
Oh,
There's a
yeah. No
dog.
worries. But I love that part about, do they see the gift in you? Because I mean, first of all, like you said, you have to have identified that to some extent already within yourself. You have to know, what is my value? Even if
Right.
it's just an energy, maybe you don't always have words for it, but you need to have that sense of like, I'm bringing some really good stuff to this table.
Right.
And
Know
I
your
want to be,
value.
yeah, your value, and I want to be seen for it.
Yeah,
I
you
want to
want
be
somebody to see
seen.
the gift in you. So do they know whose table they're at? That's
Yeah.
number two, right? They have to know it. And that you'll know that they'll know it by the way they treat you. And then the third one is, do they want to sit at your table exclusively, or do they want to be at everybody else's table? And if you want to be at everybody else's table, you can't be at my table. There's a lot of men, I've met them, that won't get off the dating sites because to focus on well, we've been going out a few weeks. Well, look, why do you have to still date somebody else? Why don't we just figure out if we work? No, I want to keep, well, honey, you just go ahead. I'm not your girl then. For sure, I'm not your girl.
Right.
And you're not my guy, because if you don't see the gift in me and you want to go and be at everybody else's table, well, you just go ahead and do that. So, and that's also about your intention. You being clear, like, do I want one person, or do I want to be dating a million people? I don't know who has the energy for that, but God bless America. That's
Right. I
fine.
mean, I can imagine if you're just out of something, you want to kind of explore and see what's out there.
Exactly.
But once you come to that decision, I would like to create a loving partnership with somebody.
Exactly.
And it's interesting. So I am of the younger generation. And yet, even when I'm dating, I feel like, I mean, like an old soul, which is, I think, part of that healer
Mm,
quality.
yes.
But it's like people don't know the thing when they find it. It's like, well, okay, if it's not the thing, sure, keep dating everybody, right? Like you should, because it's not
Right.
what you want. But if you're just are into date to date, even when you've been doing that for 10 years, it's like, well, do you even know what the real thing is? Do you know that exists? And I feel like a lot of the men that I've met on dating apps in the last 5 years, it wasn't always like that, but definitely recently more than ever, I'm like, I don't even think you know what the real thing is. You wouldn't know if you found it.
No, and the other part of it too is they're afraid. There's a lot of fear there. There's a fear around, like, what if I miss the other person? There's FOMO, and there's all kinds of fear.
Yeah.
But and they, a lot of times, the rush that they get from that first couple of dates is, they say, well, I'll date this one a couple of times. Oh, that's exciting. And then the next, then they go on to the next person, and that's it. They never get to a real, it's surface.
No, that's a great point, that it's fear underneath. That's exactly, when you said that, I'm like, that's exactly what it is. Because, and this was kind of one of the other topics that you and I discussed before, they're afraid of intimacy. They're afraid of, there's a guardedness in their
Yeah.
heart. So it's easy to kind of be spastic and like sample this and this. And that's not a generalization of everybody who's doing that. But if you've been doing that for like 12 years, and there's probably an energy there that you're avoiding, you're running from. And yeah, exactly. It's that fear.
Well, that would mean, work on yourself. So if anybody's out there that has this going on, I mean, you want to work with somebody like you or me, or somebody that, can help you. Like I always say to people, if you can't get help with me, get help somewhere. There's a million, just like there's a lot of cardiologists out there, there's a lot of healers and spiritual guides out there. There's lots of people, there's coaches, there's life coaches. If you don't resonate with me, fine, but find somebody else, for God's sake, because we are all waiting for you to recognize who you are in this world, so that this universe can be balanced. Because, living your purpose is tantamount to the balance of the equilibrium of the universe. That's bottom line. So I don't really care where you get help. Just please do something about your stuff.
Right.
Right.
Well, and also identifying, because I think when you're in that avoidant pattern, it can sometimes even Because, well, at least this is, again, it's a generalization, but for men, like that bachelordom, quote unquote, it can even be sort of not applauded, but it's like, oh, that's so cool, bachelor pad, oh, bachelor for life. And it's like we're basically praising something that ultimately is like an avoidance of opening your heart back up, and just a coping mechanism to stay shut down.
Yes, you're right. And I will say, when I speak to men, they say exactly the same things about women.
Oh,
So
really?
yes, yes. So, they say that women don't want to settle down, and and that's a lot, my this is with my age group. So, and I can see that because you can get set in your ways and complacent, and it's okay. And maybe Mr. Right Now is okay for Saturday night, and that's it, and
Right.
not really have to deal with anything else. Um, but and I wanted to finish with if you don't mind, the last criteria for sitting at the table, because it's are they legally and emotionally free to sit at your table? And I will say that the emotional part is really the most important, because unless they're available emotionally, if unless they're able to be present for you, uh, they don't belong at your table. Because a lot of times when people are going through a divorce, there's circumstances where, especially with COVID, where the courts weren't seeing that, and things get
Right.
pushed back and all of that. I get it. But if they're tied to, sometimes if they're overly tied to their kids, where they can't have an adult relationship, or if they're tied to their life circumstances and they can't be present for you, if they're, in the middle of a hiatus when you meet them, it's not really a good idea. They're not emotionally free to sit at the table. And you want to let them figure their life out, even no matter how good looking they are, and, you know, great they are in bed, or whatever you find attractive. You really need to let them, give them the respect. And, when you give them that respect, you're telling them, you know what, you can handle this. You're giving them the permission to fix their life and figure it out. And when you do that, it teaches them that, it's a teaching moment, because they're probably used to people just being okay with their stuff.
Right. Okay with kind of like mediocrity.
Right. Well, women will like, it's like a warm body for some
Right.
people is better than nobody, and it's not.
Right.
And a lot of women, I think, and men too, I'm sure, will, mug up with somebody just to not be alone on a Friday or Saturday night.
Right. Well, and compromise, like overly compromise themselves and what they really want, what they really need. For women, it's that desire piece I found for myself and so many women. It's like not honoring what we really desire. And so we find somebody who's good enough.
Right.
It's okay for right, but then all of a sudden, years might go by, and then we get very comfortable. We form attachments, it's normal, but
Right.
it becomes much harder to go
Break
back and
away.
say, but this wasn't really what I desired.
And think about, then you have to break up with somebody after 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, five, and because you never were really quite happy. It's like, it's kind of, like my marriage. And it's it's awful. Even if you want it, it's just awful to have to do that, instead of being clear up front with what you want and who deserves to sit at your table. That's the best. That's, being filled up with your community, and doing all this, and living an aligned, purpose driven life, being healed, and continuously working on yourself, and doing good things for yourself, engaging in extreme self-care, all of this. And then, hopefully attracting the right person into your life. You'll know, because your life will be peaceful. And then somebody will come in, and if there's waves, it'll hit you smack in the face if you've been living a peaceful life. People who live in turbulence and chaos attract turbulence and chaos, and they can't see it. And then they get themselves swept up in that.
Right. Well, it can even feel, I mean, it sort of becomes almost like an addiction. I mean, it can
Oh,
feel
it's
quote
totally an
unquote
addiction.
comfortable. It can feel normal. It could even be exciting, versus like you were saying, that sort of the peaceful place where
Right.
you're creating stability and building a foundation from there.
Yeah, I had a boyfriend that would yell, and I was going out with him for like 2 years, and and the first year was really good, and then after that, it was like, I stayed a year too long, but he did for me what I couldn't do for myself, and he broke up, which I think the universe will take care of things for you if you won't do it yourself. But and I remember going, why are you talking to me that way? Like, why do you do that? And because he was used to a chaotic, like fighting and yelling from a very young age. And believe me, I had that too, but I've grown. And that's what he needed. He needed that chaos. And I wasn't going to give it to him because I'm like, I'm not living like that. That's not what I do.
Right. And like now what you're saying, reflecting back, it's like, and that energy wasn't good for me. Didn't want it in my life. Even though maybe at the moment all of the love and the relationship that you had built, it became harder to say no. And yet, looking back, it's like, well, that was a good thing. Thanks, universe,
Yeah, right.
for
Exactly.
taking him out of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so you know, it, it really is about the individual and the person, and then going forward, living that life that you attract the best. So, I have this deck of love cards that I've shuffled. Can I pull one?
Sure, let's do it.
I would like to pull one, and then maybe we read it for your listeners.
That's a great
Oh,
idea.
oh, this is awesome. Turn your heart light on. I have to put on my glasses because I can't read. It says, reflect on a time when you experienced love. So a lot of us, we shut off that heart light. We shut it off because we're so afraid. Look at how pretty. We shut it off because we're afraid. We have that fear. We fear abandonment, rejection, humiliation, loss, commitment, maybe fear of missing out on some other, you know, uh, happening. If you're with this person, maybe you're missing out on your friends or whatever. But we turn off that heart light. But this is turn on your heart light. When you turn it on and you make decisions out of love, they're the best decisions for you and everybody else around you. So yeah, turn on that heart light. I love that.
I love
Turn
it.
on your heart light. Yes. So, and it says reflect on the time when you experienced love. So if you forgot what it feels like, kind of go back to a time when you experience love. And even if it's a love of a mom or a grandma, you can feel that love and you know what that feels like. And, it's not the same, but that love is love.
Wait, you're tuning in with that frequency that you're desiring to create more of in your life. So that's wonderful. So good. Well, thanks for joining me, Steph. It was so wonderful to hear about your rules of dating and how to decide if somebody deserves to sit at your table. I think that was really helpful for so many people. And also for this reading at the end.
Yes,
Hopefully, some of the listeners are now learning how to turn on their heart light or tuning back
absolutely.
into that memory that's going to support them.
That's right. Thank you. Oh my, it was a blast. I love it. This is the best conversation.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, this is why I do it. I'm obsessed with talking about all things love and dating. I think it's such important topics as well
It
for
really is.
people because as we got into it, it clearly relates to so many other parts of your life. And so
Absolutely.
it's not anything in isolation. It's all kind of one and the same woven together. Like you were saying, tuning into your gifts and your purpose and bringing that equilibrium back to the world. So it's of tantamount importance.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Perfect. And if anybody wants to connect with Steph, her information is below this video. Click the links, reach out, and get in touch with her.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Ciao, ciao.